In this video, I'm going to be talking about how to construct the floor and roof system for our precast structure. So the first thing that we're going to need to do is load an Autodesk family for some beams. So I'm going to go to Load Autodesk Family, and you can search for Precast. And if you scroll down, you can look for Precast Rectangular Beam. Click on that and click on Load. Now, one thing I noticed in looking at my columns is that they are the corbels are slightly offset, and I'm going to need to fix that. So we'll see if we can't do this by clicking on all of the columns at the same time, at least in those groupings. And let's see here, this is the west side, so I'm going to set those to 0. Apply, and so those have been corrected. And I think I'll have the same issue with the ones on the west side of the structure. So I'm going to click on those and scroll down to this time. It's going to be the east side and reset them so that they are centered. So now I'm in level 2 at the lower left-hand corner of the structure. And these are my columns I'm looking at. So when I go to architecture, when I go to structure and beam, you'll notice that there is a series of precast beams, 12 RB24 and 16 RB32. I'm going to click on this one that's 12 RB24, and I'm going to edit the type. And I'm going to duplicate this one. I'll call it 10 RB20. And then I'll go and I'll change the dimensions. This is going to be 10 inches and 1 foot 8. And I'll say okay. And I'll go ahead and place that beam. So it's sitting on the columns, but let's go back to this again, structure beam. And you'll see it's going to initially place it at the edge of the corbel. So I put one in there. And by the way, you want to make sure you're on fine so that you see the width of the beam. Now I'm going to go to the south elevation. You can see it's not quite where it needs to be. A few changes that need to happen. That I'm going to make it minus 10, both the start and the end. And you'll see that you have some controls to stretch it a little bit. So we want to place it so it's resting on the corbel. And now I'm going to just take a quick dimension here. Snap override, perpendicular. I've got 10 inches. So I have enough for my hollow core slab plus a 2-inch topping slab on top. So let's go now back to level 2. And I'll just make a few copies of that. Copy 25 feet. Over here. Let's take a look at the structure in 3D. So there I have these beams resting in the east-west direction on those columns. And I'm going to make copies of them to the upper level as well. I'll click on each of them and hold down the control key. go to copy, and then I'll paste to align to selected levels, and I'll put them on the third level. Now, I'm probably going to need to make some adjustments there. Yes, I want them to sit a little higher, just 2 inches higher. So I'll raise them all up so that they are at -8. We won't have a topping slab up there. Instead, we'll have rigid insulation like on some of the other structures. So we got the 3D, and our beams are all in place. So the beams are now in place, so we're ready to start working on the hollow core slab assembly. So I'm going to go to level 2. And zoom into the third structure, the precast structure. I'm going to start off with making a floor, and it's kind of a complicated process, but from there, we will begin to integrate those hollow core slab panels. So I'm going to go to architecture, floor architect, or floor structural, and I'm going to look for a floor type called generic 12. I'm going to edit the type. I'm going to create a duplicate. Okay, now the duplicate is going to be 8 inches thick because that will be the depth of our hollow core slabs. Let me say okay. And I'm going to change the thickness to 8 inches and say okay. And okay. All right, now I'm going to start with making a rectangle that will serve as this floor. Before I do that, I'm going to drop the level of the floor to -2 inches. And just remember, we will have a topping slab that sits on top of the hollow core slabs. So back to my rectangle, and I'll start by clicking this point, lower left-hand corner of that column and upper right-hand corner. Okay. Now, I'm also going to notch around all of the columns. So go around and add lines and trim lines. Let's move that there. The middle ones as well. So I'll draw 2, 3, 4. So right now I'm just using the split element tool, which you can find up here in the ribbon. I'll make my way all the way around until I've created these little notches around every column. And I'll also make an opening for the column that's in the middle here. Okay. I'll pause the recording and finish that work. Okay, so I've gone around and created all these notches all the way around. Another thing that I would want to do is change the span direction. So these hollow core slabs are going to go in the north-south direction. Right now, it's set to be running east-west. So I'll click on span direction, and then I'll select the side over here. And then I will click on the check mark. Right, when I go to my 3D view, I have this floor. It's a generic floor. It doesn't have any particular material assigned to it. And I'm going to use that to generate a slab of these hollow core panels. I'll go back to level 2, and I'm going to select the floor. I'm going to go to Precast, and I'm going to use this tool called Split. Right, it may ask you if it can download some content, and you will need to do that in order to apply these hollow core slabs. Okay, I'll go ahead and click OK. All right, so you can see that it has applied a series of these slabs across the length of the floor slab. I'm going to go back to my 3D view. Take a look. Okay, there they are. You see the ends of them that are bearing on these beams. And technically, there would be a joint that ran across here in the middle where they sit on the intermediate beam in here. They wouldn't necessarily be the full length. This is 50 foot. That's a little bit too long to put on the back of the truck. All right, and we need to repeat this process for the slabs that will sit at the top of the building. Okay, now I'm on level 3, and I'm going to generate another floor. So I'll go to architecture, floor, structural, and I'll use the same generic floor type. I'll create a boundary. Now, in this case, I'm not going to need to make any holes in the panel. All right, and the top of this one will remain, actually, it looks like it defaulted to -2. I'm going to change this back to 0. I want the top to be at level 3. And I'll apply. And then I'll click on the check mark. Now, let's take a look at this again in 3D. All right, now this one does not yet have the hollow core slabs assigned to it. I'm going to go to level 3 again, and it's still selected. I'll go to Precast and Split. And again, to find that hollow core slab, I'll say OK. So what did I forget to do? I forgot to alter the span direction. So I'm going to undo that. Then I'm going to click on, I want to make sure I'm picking this top floor element. I'm going to edit the boundary, span direction, and I'll move it back. So it's running north and south. And then I will go ahead and precast split. Hollow core slab. So there's that. Okay, here we have our hollow core slabs. Now I'm in the section looking north. And as you can see, this hollow core slabs are showing in the section. If you don't see them, what I would suggest that you do is go to the visibility graphics and scroll down till you find parts and make sure it's checked. And then hit OK. Now, the last part of this is to create a topping slab that will go on top of the hollow core slab. So I will go back to level 2, and I'm going to bring in, create a new floor that'll sit on top of there. So again, I'm going to go to floor structural, and this time I'm going to click on concrete slab, edit type, duplicate, and I'll create one that is 2 inches. Okay, and I will change the thickness of the slab to 2 inches. Okay. This time, instead of making the rectangle and doing all that trimming, I think it may just be easier to just go around and follow the profile inside the columns. And the top of it wants to be at 0, 0. I'll hit the check mark. And then I'll go back to my section. Here we have that slab sitting on top of the hollow core slabs. And that'll be it for this portion.